What is good, Heinen? Welcome back to the Love, Life, and Legacy podcast, the podcast dedicated to you, helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of R. If you are a single person that is trying to figure out how to prepare well for marriage and the blessing, if you are confused as to what is really vital and important to focus on, because everyone under the sun is going to say something different about what is important. Today in the episode with Araceli and myself, we are unraveling the concept of the real importance of marriage prep. We're going to be going directly to the heart of it, and we are going to be digging in to how to help you guys prepare well, and also how individuals in High Noon are preparing well to be in a blessed relationship so that they can have long-term success, fulfillment, and happiness as blessed families. Are you in, guys? All right, see you in this episode with Araceli and myself. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Love, Life, and Legacy podcast. Araceli is here and myself.
Hello.
We are going to be talking today. We just launched an episode recently about High Noon's new direction. We're going to be branding ourselves as the marriage prep people, not so that we can kick up some sand in people's faces, but actually because we want to complement this desire people have to receive the blessing and this desire people have to create blessed families. And we realized through many, many years, actually almost a decade that High Noon's been around, next year will be 10-year anniversary, Araceli, we have realized that what we truly offer and what we feel like we are guided by God to offer is a substantiated way for people to prepare for marriage internally and prepare themselves to be an excellent spouse, which we realize is such a desperate need that people have. In fact, most of our participants in our programs are of individuals that are single, that want to receive the blessing and recognize High Noon as a path for them to prepare well. And so this episode we're going to dive into today is what is the best preparation for matching and blessing, especially considering the fact that everyone everywhere will tell you what you need, quote unquote, to be in a marriageable relationship, to be in a good relationship, right? And we want to get to the root of things so that we can focus on what truly matters and not ignore the things that actually matter in preparing for the blessing. So, Araceli, I want to have you on here to pick your mind. You were blessed last few years, or 1 year?
1 year.
1 year, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very recent.
I just want to pass it over to you now and kind of ask you what you feel like you've observed and learned in your own life, and also working with a lot of High Noon people, and especially women. Like, what is the key ingredient to preparing well for a blessing?
Mm. Yeah. Okay. I think it's a very general and big topic, right? And we can go into a lot of things that, could help you. I would say the best thing for me, and I don't want to sound cliche and I don't want to sound repetitive, but really the 5 virtues that we talk about all the time were really a great thing that I worked on that helped me on my own blessing preparation and in my matching process. So yeah, I see other sisters and people are participating on our programs, Ascend and Core, and I definitely I get that confirmation more and more. Like working on those 5 working on those 5 virtues, it's such a great preparation, such a great internal work that you do for yourself, your own life, but then also that eventually has effect on your matching process and then on your blessing. So yeah, I feel like I'm repeating myself all the time when people talk to me about what should I prepare for, how should I prepare for, and what should I do, and just like it always comes to my mind, the 5 virtues. It's like it's just such an amazing thing to prepare.
We might be repeating ourselves, but we need to. Why? Because people are confused. People are so confused. If you go out on the street and ask people randomly, like, what should people do to prepare for a relationship? People will almost immediately go to physical appearance, money, or stability, external stability to some extent, which are all important, right? We're not going to sit here and say none of that matters, but does it matter nearly as much as these things we're talking about? So they're not to be taken lightly. I think they should be repeated because nobody's repeating them.
Mm.
So, what are these virtues we're talking about, and how did you specifically practice them, and how did you experience them in preparing for the blessing?
Yeah. So the five virtues are courage, honesty, integrity, accountability, and grace.
Mm.
Um, yes. So those are very big words. But in practice, I would say first in my own, sexual integrity recovery journey, first when I was dealing with my own unwanted sexual habits, yeah, having the courage to be honest with myself and with my parents about the fact that I was, having this habit that I didn't like, that I didn't want to, and that I wanted to work on, was the first step to also receive grace. And it was such a big thing for me to feel that my parents loved me unconditionally, that they would forgive me, and that they would accept me no matter what, and that they would support me in my journey. That was the first step to then have a very long process of then um, struggling to find that same acceptance and love for myself. Because it was easy to accept that my parents would love me, right? Even if at the beginning I was scared to say to my parents, oh, I had this, you know, um, masturbation habit. Um, it was scary, but my parents were able to, talk to me about it, and accept me and hug me and embrace me and just support me. Then the next step was, okay, I need to forgive myself, and I need to accept myself, and in this journey of recovering my sexual integrity, I think that was the thing that I struggled the most with, the grace, extending grace to myself, forgiving myself, and yeah, and loving myself. It was so hard, and it took a long time, and once I had that process, once I went through that process, um I was able to accept myself for who I was, and accept that I was, child of God, that had made mistakes, but that I was correcting them. And so that was a really necessary foundation for me to be able to accept then and love my future husband. So that's why I believe this is such an important preparation, um, to have these five virtues, especially grace. I think is very difficult to get, but important. Um, yeah, that after going through that process of being able to accept myself and forgive myself, I was able to then accept other people, right? Whatever their mistakes, whatever the flaws, and that I think is a very important foundation for any relationship, right? Um, yeah. So I don't know if you want to comment, ask
Yeah.
any questions before. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can. My absolute turning point in my faith and desire to even receive the blessing was talking about my sexual integrity with my father in particular.
Mm.
And that conversation, the first time we had that conversation, could have gone two different, completely different ways. The way he responded was a good way, a good example.
Mm.
And but I know that a lot of people face these conversations with their parents, and they don't receive unconditional acceptance and hugs and
Yeah.
embrace. It's like, actually, I would say most parents are not capable. For many
Mm.
reasons, they're
Yeah.
in pain themselves, they're confused themselves, they don't understand, they are struggling themselves, whatever the reason. A lot of parents will, you know, respond negatively and
Yeah.
kind of leave the child with a feeling of like, how could you do this?
Mm.
Like, I'm disappointed in you. Like, how could you do this?
Mm.
Of all the things I've taught you, I can't believe you're doing this, right? So that
Yeah.
recognizing that that's a reality that a lot of individuals that are facing, and that's why High Noon is here, is because we're
Mm.
we're not trying to replace people's parents or the love that we're meant to experience in our families, but actually to supplement. Because I believe that God gave humanity, 8 billion people on this world, so that we can experience different realms of heart and love from many different individuals like uncle figures and aunt figures. And
Mm.
so if many times in my life, if I felt like I didn't have what I felt like from my mom or my dad, I would go to uh, an uncle or an aunt figure to ask for that particular piece of advice,
Right.
whatever it may be. Sometimes it's like, I want to learn how to fish in the local lakes, and sometimes they'll go to one uncle in our community and be like, hey, what can I use as bait for fishing in this particular lake? Like that kind of stuff. Or maybe it's sexual integrity related, which was always like Uncle David Wolfenberger was the go-to guy, right, in my life
Mm.
if it was related to sexual integrity, or if it was, whatever it is. And I think that we're not here to replace, but we're here to supplement, kind of to
Mm.
the same extent that true parents are here as kind of, I believe in my experiences, like grandparent figures, because I never had grandparents. So I kind of see them as supplementary grandparents for me to experience that part of God's heart, which is kind of the grandfatherly, grandmotherly part of love.
Mm.
And that's kind of a soothing thing for me, because otherwise I don't have that type of love in my life. So
Right.
I would say that for me, it was the turning point was talking about sexual integrity with my parents. I've actually noticed that, sexuality is one of the most secretive and heavy points of shame and darkness in people's lives for many
Yeah.
reasons. From the fall, from our past experiences, from our mistakes, we've inherited a lot of weight and baggage from, society, culture, from our parents, even from our own experiences. And so sexuality as a whole is a point of so much just shame, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word, just shadows. And
Yeah.
so it's also, on the flip side, one of the most liberating conversations people will have in their lives is when they're be able to be open about their own heaviness around their sexuality, and then be received, like you're saying, Arceli, with grace and acceptance and unconditional
Mm.
love from a parent or, uncle, aunt figure, a community, a group, older brother, older sister. And that is where the turning point happens in so many people's lives. It happened in my life as well. Uh, and so, yeah, I can attest to the same, very similar experience. It's through these kind of
Mm.
really, really heavy, deep conversations and just being seen by the right people that really gives us confidence. Like, oh yeah, like I can do this. But what happens on the flip side if you're open with somebody and you share with them and they don't give you grace and acceptance? It puts you on a very different path.
Yeah.
Sammy and I, the High Noon brothers, could have been a very, very different life situation right now. We wouldn't be doing
Mm.
this mission of trying to help people have sexual integrity if our parents reacted in very, a starkly different way than they did. We could have been a
Yeah.
very, very different set of brothers, right? But we're here. We're not. We both say that we're good men that try our best, that are not perfect, and we're very flawed. But we're here. We care. We support. We have families. We raise our children. Between the two of us, we have seven children. My parents went from two
Wow.
kids to seven grandchildren within a few years because my brother just had twins.
Yeah.
God bless him. He was like two kids, and then we were at three, and then somehow he leapfrogged us, and then they, grew to two to four within a short time. It's pretty crazy.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah. Anything to add?
Yeah. I mean, it is very sad and unfortunate when you can't have that experience with your parents.
Mm.
And I think where this is where grace comes back to being such an important virtue to try to practice,
Yeah.
and understand that our parents, they're still growing, right? We're all still growing, right? And we still have so many things to learn and to develop. And so um we are supposed to perfect our parents, right? And it's a very hard process to open up and to not receive that love from your parents. It's of course super hard, but then it kind of like makes you as a child open up to the possibility of you as a child give that patience and love and compassion to your parents and understand where they are coming from, and understand that even if they weren't able to give you grace, if you are able to, you can give grace to your parents. And as you said before, Benji, look for that acceptance in other people, right? Uncle figure, aunt figure, mentors, other brothers and sisters, and you know, there's a, I think I have a, belief that we have to help our parents grow. And if at the moment they weren't able to offer that grace, then at some point eventually they will be able to do that, if we're able to show that ourselves. But I know it's a very hard process for sure, and it's very it can feel very painful, right? And you can feel lonely, right, if you don't feel that. I feel like that was my connection with God and your parents, where it comes from. um I did have a very great experience with my parents, but I think I was judging myself the most, and the hardest, and I couldn't see myself as a child of God. And that's where I had to find my connection with God and your parents, and understand that they forgave me and that they would accept me for who I was. And at the beginning, it was an intellectual process, because I knew that, intellectually we know, we've heard so many lectures and we know all of this intellectually, but then being able to feel that way was a very hard and different process, right? And it took a long time for me to actually emotionally feel that way, right? And so, yeah, it just takes time. So also give yourself some grace, right? I think I always come back to grace, and for one, myself giving grace to myself was a very
Yeah.
yeah, special time, special moment. um yeah. And then, yeah, I think once I had that experience of being able to accept myself, accepting others was so much easier, and so much uh so such a better experience for me to be a better sister, a better daughter, and a better eventually wife, where I could see other people for who they are, children of God, but we're all struggling in certain ways, with different things, and just accept that we can do better, if we receive the support that we need. So I was judging others before that. Before that experience, I would judge others, as you had mentioned, right? It's like, how could someone do this, right? I was the one thinking that, and then when I had that same experience where I had those mistakes, it was so hard for me, right, to go through that process, and then being able to accept that I had made mistakes and I was still a good person. um Once I was able to do that, then I could see other people, and whatever the struggles were, I could see them for who they were, brothers, sisters, same family, all children of God. And going back to the point of preparation for the blessing, I think that's a great foundation for you to base all your relationship on, right? Being able to accept your partner, no matter their mistakes, no matter their flaws and virtues, and just being able to choose someone, knowing who they are, knowing where they are in their learning and growing process, and accepting that person where they are at. I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to do.
Oh, it's essential. It is absolutely essential because you will make mistakes in marriage. You
Yeah.
will. Big mistakes and small mistakes. And I
Mm-hmm.
know when I say that, people that are really new to their relationship, they're like, something in them is like, no, because I was like this when I got blessed. It's like,
Mm.
no, like we're gonna do really, really well. I'm like, I know, I know, but you're going to make mistakes.
Mm.
No, not us. Okay, you're not gonna make any mistakes. You're never gonna say something that's unloving, or you're gonna make
Mm.
a comment that is self-centered, or you're gonna feel low emotionally. You're just gonna have a bad day. Never. It's like, no, I think it's reasonable. Like we'll all make mistakes.
Mm.
Sometimes small mistakes. We will actually probably make really big mistakes too. Whether
Mm.
it's, emotional or sexual, whatever it is, we're going to make
Mm.
mistakes. And so if you can have a couple, two individuals that are able to, like you're saying, practice these five virtues to give and receive grace, that's really it. Like you can make through any of the quote unquote most common causes of divorce, which people continuously insist are money related, which is
Mm.
not. by the way. Like, look into the actual research, my friends. Or they say it's sexual related, sexual incompatibility. It's like if it's really money, then people that have a ton of money would not divorce.
Right.
Is that true?
No, definitely not.
And it would also mean that people that have no money would always divorce. Is
Mm,
that true? No, because you
right.
can find examples in both situations, which means it's not the main thing. It's how do people communicate about money,
Mm,
especially
mm,
when we make mistakes. How do people give grace and listen and
mm,
challenge each other, but in a loving way, in a graceful way? That's really what counts. Are people able to be honest with each other, but not just honest with each other, honest with ourselves? First of all, truthful with ourselves, which I find fascinating because we're talking about grace, right? Let me tell you a story of a few brothers I've been mentoring recently. And it kept coming up where, when we do our check-ins with individuals in our programs, they'll message me or I'll have a call with them, asking them about how their emotional state is doing, right? And a few brothers were mentioning is like, yo, I've been really frustrated recently because of people in my life, people I'm living with, roommates or whatever I'm working with, are doing things and it's causing me to be really angry and frustrated at them. And so I was
mm,
kind of asking them more questions about these interactions and then they're saying like, oh, this is making me frustrated and stressed because of these people, and then I'm going to porn, masturbation to release these emotions, right? I'm like, okay.
mm,
So I was like, let's back up a bit. Do you see how their actions are not causing you to feel these emotions? Right? In other
mm,
words, they're doing their thing, which is,
right.
wrong or right, subjective, and then you are reacting to that.
Mm,
Do you see
yeah.
that they're not forcing you to be stressed out? Does that make sense? And they were
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't understand. And I was like, okay, another way of putting this is, do you feel like it's justifiable to be angry at them? And they're like, yeah. Both of these guys are like,
Mm,
yeah, absolutely.
mm.
And then I was like having such a hard time explaining this concept that people don't force you to be angry. If that
Right.
were true, let's say it like this. If it were true that people forced to be angry, then if somebody did something and you didn't know about it, it would cause you like this knee-jerk reaction to just feel anger and you wouldn't even know why. Does that make
Mm,
sense? It's
yeah.
like if somebody stole $20 from you and you never found out about it, would it make you angry? No,
Right.
because you
No.
didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But if they were forcing you to feel that way, then if they stole that money from you, you would immediately feel like frustration at that person, right? So, anyways, my point is like I was trying to figure out why is it that for some people it's so hard to take responsibility for my emotions.
Yeah.
Just to
Mm-hmm.
say, I feel frustrated at you and that's my fault.
Yeah.
And we still have to work on whatever happened. Of course, we're not going to ignore that. But
Mm-hmm.
spouse, friend, brother, sister, parent, like I feel angry and that's my fault that I feel this way. And I'm going to take responsibility for that. But I'm just letting
Mm,
you know that like that's a mature perspective. But then there are some
right.
people who are just like, you're making me angry, spouse. You're forcing me, and this is I'm upset because of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I was so confused. I was like, how is it that some people are just operating like that their whole lives
Mm,
of
mm,
inability to take ownership of my emotions and how I'm feeling, right? And I realized it's because I was trying to teach a blind person what color looks like. Let me
mm,
explain. People that have never experienced grace, unconditional love in their lives, they have no idea what it looks like or what it feels like.
mm.
And they have no way to give it.
Right.
And so I was explaining it like that to these guys. It's like you've never experienced grace, so you don't know how to give grace because you don't know what it looks like, which
Mm,
is the saddest thing on planet Earth, if you ask me.
yeah.
It's like if you're trying to explain someone that's born without sight what color it is. It's actually they have no idea what you're talking about,
Mm,
right?
mm,
But if somebody
yeah.
was born with sight and then they lost their sight after they were born, they will forever have a reference point of what sight, what color is, even though they're
Mm,
blind.
yeah.
And so at the same time, when we experience that grace we're talking about, Araceli, that unconditional love, it's like a reference point where you're like, oh, like today I'm feeling really low and depressed and lonely, but I can bounce back pretty quickly because I can remember. It's like, oh yeah,
Mm,
God is with me because I
yeah.
have these experiences as evidence that I'm loved. I have confirmation. I'm reaffirmed that I'm worthy of grace and love. But if you take that from someone's life and they never experience that love, that grace, that those five virtues, they never experience it, then they're perpetually trying to just figure out where's the love? And they go in all
Mm.
kinds of directions trying to receive that love in every which way they can, through
Yeah.
validation, external validation, through porn, right? Through their social
Yeah.
media. And they're just confused because it's like, I don't know what real that unconditional grace feels like, you know?
Mm.
So that's the job. That's work we're doing here in Hainan. We're trying to help individuals experience grace and essentially all these five virtues we're talking about. But it really starts with the honesty, the courage to be honest, like you're talking about
Yeah.
ourselves.
Hello! Have you ever wondered, could I join a program to help with marriage preparation that's free, that's international, that includes the principle and our true parents' teachings, and includes the element of sharing with other brothers and sisters my age, that we can grow together? Have you ever wondered that? Oh man, I'm wondering that too. Wait a minute, there is a program you can join. You can join the core program for singles. You have to sign up here on the link highnoon.org, and that will take you to the registration, which is limited, by the way, for the core program, which is run by the High Noon team. This program will hopefully show you how to prepare well for the blessing and to learn God's vision for marriage, sex, and intimacy. I hope to see many of you there. Take care.
And then we experience that grace from the right people in
Mhm.
our families, sometimes outside our families with other individuals. And then we bring that into our lives and into our marriage, and magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing I would like to mention about you said something about being able to communicate things in a mature way. I think that's very important to um yeah, to have and to be aware of that. As you mentioned, once when you are responsible for yourself and for your emotions, you are able to communicate in a way that it's productive, right? And it's gonna lead to a good result. And so one thing with integrity and accountability, I think that I want to mention as well is it's being able to call somebody out on their whatever mistake they're making, whatever action they're making that is not the best, um in a loving way, in a graceful way, being able to extend them grace as you call them out. um but just because you're being forgiving and compassionate doesn't mean that you are justifying or validating whatever wrong action somebody is doing, even to yourself. It's like you can be patient and compassionate with yourself, and you can also take accountability and admit that you made a mistake, and also call somebody out in whatever mistake they've made. At the same time, taking ownership of our emotions, right? Being able to say, oh, I feel this way about, you did something and I feel this way. And that's one thing that, individually I have to deal with. But at the same time, there is something that was done, right? That, this person needs to take care of in order to go back to having integrity, right? And being accountable to their goals, to their ideals, to their vision, right? And so, yeah, I think we have a hard time to do that because I don't think we've been taught how to do that, how to um have accountability, how to get accountability, and how to extend that accountability onto others, right, in a way that is productive and is healthy, instead of judging and accusing people, right? Because the normal way that people will do is that you did this something and you are terrible and whatever, right? We tend to go into this childish accusatory way, but we can call somebody out in a way that is yeah, more mature, more productive, and will bring up unity eventually, right? Because what we do with our spouse, that couple needs to grow, needs to get better, and that entity that you need, they will go through something and they will end up being better for that, right? But that's only if they get together to solve a problem, right? And you can only do that if you're communicating well with grace and with honesty, and getting that accountability, and being able to admit, yes, I made a mistake, right? And yes, I want to correct it, right? Instead of accusing someone, right? Instead of putting all the blame onto someone, right? And it's such a I think it's such a much better way to go about it, because there's actual solution
Yeah.
for things. Um, yeah, so having grace, I think, is such an important thing. In the end, it really does trickle down to everything that you do, to everything that you think, and then the way that you communicate. It just gets so much better. Eventually,
Yeah.
any communication is so much productive and healthy, right?
Yeah.
And it is something that we do a lot in our programs, in facilitating, right? I think I was able to practice that so much as a facilitator, being able to see my sisters in whatever stage they were, and instead of accusing them, instead of being disappointed with them or getting annoyed at them, just like, okay, you're doing this and you're in this process and this journey, and there's a way, right? And we can find it together. So yeah, those things definitely help me, as you can probably see.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. It's a beautiful community that we're developing, right? Especially for, people that don't feel like they have people to go to, which is a really common thing people say is like, I don't have people in my life that I can rely on every day, especially when I'm struggling. And that's most of humanity, unfortunately, right? I
Yeah.
was laughing, Araceli, because I was thinking about over the weekend. I was sick. I had a fever and a headache,
Mm.
and then my headache got really bad. So Hitoe, my wife, started getting worried about me, and she was, kind of taking care of me while I was in bed. And then at some point, she's like, you might not wake up tomorrow or something like that. You're like, she said it in a very like Japanese way. She's like, you might be cold tomorrow morning.
Mm.
And then she went on
Yeah.
with her day. And I was like, at some point, because I was sick, I was kind of not in the best emotional state. I was kind of irrational. And I was like, Hitoe, is this how you would treat me if I was going to die tomorrow? It's like, you would just go live your life. You wouldn't like spend any time with me, like holding me. And
Mm.
but she was just like, you probably won't wake up tomorrow. And then she left the room. Oh my God. And then, so as an example, like I could have just been like, "You terrible wife, you're the worst, and you're making me angry, whatever." And then later, I
Yeah.
was like, "Honey, like, can you sit down with me for a second?" I just held her hand, and I was like, "I've been a real jerk when I'm sick, and that's my
Mm.
fault. I'm
Mm.
not rational. You're doing your best. Taking care of our baby, our 1-year-old, and the older children,
Mm.
and it's my fault if I'm irritable, like that."
Mm.
And then I just chose to laugh off this fact that she
Mm.
genuinely thought like maybe I won't wake up tomorrow. And then she just was
My-
like, just go live
Yeah.
my life, because I would have been like, honey, like I have to tell you all the things I always wanted to tell you, and let's spend every moment together like it's our last,
Mm.
But she's just
Yeah.
like, see you in spirit world. And then that's kind of
Right.
how she operates. Yeah.
Mm. That's
Uh,
funny.
so
Yeah.
that's Grace.
Grace.
I was curious about this the muscle of grace that you've developed, that we've developed, and that we're developing in High Noon. How has it served you in your matching process, in particular, with David, your husband,
Mm.
and then also going into your marriage?
Yeah. Well, first off, I think that having developed that muscle, it was so much easier to bring up the topic of sexual integrity in the matching process. And it wasn't heavy for me to talk about because I had already kind of like processed it. And I knew that I needed to find someone that would be able to accept me in the way that I had felt that acceptance from my parents and even from myself eventually. So being able to bring up the topic of, previous, sexual integrity issues, and yeah, and then also being able to accept David's let's say confession, right? Not confession, but whenever he was able to open up himself to me and be truthful about his mistakes, his flaws, and his vision for himself that he wanted to become. And I was able to, accept accept him, right? And just being able to see him, like truly see him. And I think that was the most important thing in our matching process. When we were just talking about it the other day, being able to accept each other for who we are, all our history, whatever, past mistakes and whatever virtues and victories we have, and then decide to love each other for who we are, right? We weren't doing that blind love type of thing, but just the contrary, right? Like we know who we are, and we seen, we even gone through some like miscommunication and yeah, some conflicts, and we were able to give each other grace for those conflicts that we went through, and accept each other, um, and also support each other to grow, to learn. So the first thing is just being able to, yeah, give that grace to accept this person, whatever their mistakes are. And then as I was mentioning before, right, being able to call him out whenever something happened. And I would like to say that especially in the matching process, it's very hard to do and it's very awkward to do, because you don't have a like clear definition of what your relationship with this person is. Like it's not your blood brother, or it's not a person that you've known for, forever in your local community, that you can say, hey, you did this, and it was wrong, or it hurt me, or I didn't like it, or whatever. It's so awkward to do that with someone that you just barely know, that it could potentially be your husband and could potentially scare him off. But being able to be honest, but in a graceful way again, was really important to set the tone for our relationship, where we would practice those 5 virtues with each other in every conversation, in every communication, and in our vision for what we wanted to have as a couple. Was really the best foundation that we could have started to develop even before being blessed, in our matching process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
beautiful. It's
yeah.
really beautiful. I mean, that conversation
Yeah.
could have gone very different ways, right? Here,
Yeah.
like here's an example, if I can offer. There's a few guys that I'm mentoring who are blessed and who joined the Ascend program, which is a sexual integrity training program, right? Because basically they're in a situation where they confessed to their spouse about masturbation in particular, right? Which is a
Yeah.
very, very difficult, deep thing for men and women, but particularly these guys to grapple with the fact that they don't want to struggle with masturbation, especially in their blessing, but they are. And so these 2 guys in particular, they, confessed to their wife, and one of them said, their wife said that she's done after she found out about this, right?
Yeah.
She's like, I'm done. Which is like on his end of obviously very painful, because he's like, I want to confess this. And on her end is very painful because of the betrayal she feels.
Yeah.
And so you could say whichever way, but really what the element that's missing is grace. That should have been established long ago, like when they started communicating. And so I'm using this as an example to illustrate the fact that the single greatest litmus test to see if this person is a potential match is, are you able to be yourself with them? Like to be seen by them? And are they able to be willing to learn how to give you grace?
Right.
And it's not absolute like unconditional acceptance from the beginning. It's like,
Yeah.
I see you as who you are. Like you struggle with masturbation or have struggled with masturbation, for example, husband, wife, whoever. And I see that that's a struggle that goes deeper than just you want to masturbate. It's like you
Yeah.
are trying to escape something. You're trying
Mm.
to deal with some unsettled emotion. And I see that, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to learn how to give you grace.
Right.
Like that's a completely different couple than people that are just going to get blessed and say, you know what, let's forget the past. Let's numb everything and then just forget
Mm.
everything because
Yeah.
we're not doing it anymore, not even addressing the root issues as to why it happened in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about is a litmus test, is like let yourself be seen, the shadows in particular, and how do they respond? And importantly, how do
Yeah.
you respond to
Mm.
someone else's shadow,
Right. Yeah.
right? And if it's anything of like, oh, I'm willing to learn how to give grace, marry that person. This is what I tell men at
Mm.
least. You find a woman that, and you let it all out,
Mm.
emotions, shadows, mistakes, and they say, yeah, I'm willing to learn how to love you. You marry that woman. There's no
Yeah.
question, God. You marry that woman. I
Yeah.
swear to goodness. I swear to
Mm.
good God
Yeah.
Almighty, that's the person you should marry. But if he or she is like, you know what? Nah, I can't deal with that. How dare you
Mm.
do this
Mm.
to me? Anything like that, you're
Yeah.
going to struggle.
So
You're going to struggle a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can say for myself in my experience with my in my matching with David, it was hard because at the time that we were in our matching process, he hadn't like he was still struggling with it, right? He was still in his journey, and I because I had gone through my own journey, I knew it was possible to like overcome, and I knew it didn't have it wasn't something that it was related to me, right? It wasn't something that he was doing to me, right? Because usually what would happen in this situation is that you would take it personally as something that they're doing to attack you personally, but it has nothing to do with, you or the other. It's just an individual personal problem that has a root issue that it's very important that you tackle and that you have the support to overcome, to address, and being able to see that and having that awareness was very important whenever we would bring the topic back up again about how he was doing, what was his progress, what was he actually doing to tackle that. Him being able to be honest about it and just, yeah, like lay it all out, and me being able to see that and accept that was very important for him to feel like he could overcome it, right? So yeah, it's hard to hear from your spouse, or from your future spouse, that they have that they're struggling with something related to porn, masturbation. It can be very hard, and it can be yeah, you may have a lot of concepts around it that will make you feel even grossed out by it, disgusted or something, and it's understandable, but at the same time it has nothing to do with the action, right? It has nothing to do with porn, masturbation. It's something else entirely. It's the root issue, and being able to love someone through that, it's such an amazing thing that you can do for someone, even if you're not gonna end up being spouses. Like in my case, I had said to David that I was willing to help him out and be with him and be by his side, even if we didn't end up becoming spouse, like match, even if we didn't match in the end, because we were talking about it even before we had decided to commit to each other, right? And when we were in the process of deciding whether to commit to each other or not, I told him, like, I'm willing to be your friend and your sister through whatever it is that you're going through, um, and yeah, I just wish you the best. Like, I really want you to be loved and happy, and even if it is with me or with eventually you decide to go with another person, and yeah, I think that was something that he felt really loved by when I said that to him. And yeah, it just felt right for me to say that. I really did feel that way about, David, like accepting and loving him as a brother. I already felt that before even deciding to commit to him. So yeah, it can be hard to feel that way and to be able to say that, but we are not perfect, right? I knew I was not perfect myself, right? And if David was willing to accept me for who I was, like there wasn't a doubt, it was a no-brainer decision for me to say, like, yes, I want to be with you, because he would accept me for who I was, but also because he was willing to be honest about who he was. I think that was such an important thing as well. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't, lying or anything like that. He was willing to expose himself in such a, like, you know, vulnerable way. And for me, that was such an important thing. Like, he's willing to put everything on the table. And he's willing to learn how to love me for who I am. So then why wouldn't I choose this person, right? So for me, that was such an important thing that he did as well. And such a, it takes so much courage, right, to do that, because it is scary. You are putting yourself out there, and you don't know what the other person is going to do. But as you mentioned, if the other person is not willing to accept that, and is not willing to decide to love you no matter what, then yeah, it's not worth it, right? And it's better to go with someone that is going to do that. So yeah,
That's
it's
beautiful.
scary,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
I don't have to
Yeah.
say that's like nailed it. I mean, you and David, two individuals that are willing to learn how to give and to receive grace. It's unstoppable, right?
Yeah.
I would say that's all that's needed. That's something I heard, a number of years ago, is that's really what's needed. That's essentially that's what God's love is
Yeah.
unconditional love. It's unconditional
Right.
grace. And so if you can bring that element, if we're trying to break down the true quality of a quality marriage, then like you can't get deeper than that. Are you able to give that kind of love to each other?
Yeah.
Which sounds very vague and esoteric, but I think in High Noon we are actually substantiating that desire that we have to experience God,
Yeah.
and we're trying to make it real. And it became very clear that that's what you and your husband did in the process of matching process, and are doing still in your blessing. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I can relate. I can, it's interesting because it's that interaction itself that was probably very healing for him to have somebody, right?
Yeah.
And I can relate as well. My wife, when I told her about, my struggles, porn and masturbation, she very similar was like not even a second like treated me differently or strangely. Not even a second, which is not what I
Yeah.
expected at all. I think especially with weighted shadow things that we carry around with us, we expect them just to be the most unbearable things, burdens for people to bear. But in reality, if we find the right people, it's kind of like God's love is an infinite source of just a black hole of love, a good type
Yeah.
of black hole where you can throw anything
Yeah.
into it and it'll just pass right through it. That's kind of what I
Yeah.
feel is like God's love. And if you share with the right person, they won't treat you differently, which is shocking because we don't think that's the case. We're like, I will definitely be rejected and disappointed in because of this, because of my
Yeah.
shadow, because of this thing I did or this way I feel. And then you share that with someone and you receive nothing but like, yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the most,
Yeah.
it's the greatest feeling in the world. It's
Yeah.
actually, I think, the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah.
That we don't experience a lot. Some people have never experienced their entire lives, which is a tragedy, but it's the greatest
Yeah.
feeling in the world. And I remember talking with Hitoe about it, and she She basically said, like, I know you will beat this, like
Mm.
that, like
Mm.
with just 100% confidence. Like, I know you'll beat
Right.
this. Like, I'm not worried, like that kind of thing. And just imagine like what that does for a man to just
Mm.
hold on, especially to the darkness of a sexual addiction for so many years, as most people do, and then to let it all out, like David did, that I have, and then have a wife that says, "You'll beat this. You'll be all right."
Mm.
You know, it's like there's
Yeah.
nothing more liberating than that. Nothing in the world. And so that's what I'm talking about for everyone listening. The reference points that we're trying to give people, seeing color for the first time in this
Mm.
metaphor I'm talking about. It's like something that changes your life, like that scene in Wizard of Oz where the he goes from black and white to color. I think when she
Mm.
puts the slippers on, or when she gets to the land of Oz, I don't remember. At some point, the
I don't know. I've
cinematic,
never seen the movie.
some point, something happens where now it's not black and white Kansas. Now it's like colorful
Yeah.
land of Oz,
Mm.
and that's the experience we're giving people in High Noon. We're trying to give that to them, real life practice, real life, day after day, week by week, so that you can
Yeah.
experience it more in your life. And it's not
Mm.
just a High Noon's way of doing things. This is like God. The five virtues is a blueprint to experience God's love. It's a step by
Mm.
step to
Yeah.
experience God's love in a meeting, in a conversation, week by week, day by day, month by month, to the point where you're living in color constantly, my friends. And when you're living in
Yeah.
color constantly, finding somebody will be easier because it'll be clearer. You won't have to face all the uncertainty and fears and shadows that most people are bringing into a dating
Mm.
relationship, a matching process. A fear of this, fear of the unknown. What if they do this? What if he does that? What if she does this? What if he has a porn thing? Right? It's
Yeah.
like, no, Hainan people, we're so in tune with our emotions and our shadows so we can identify them, we can tackle them, we can be honest with ourselves. And so it's
Yeah.
easy to ignore the fluff, to look for a matching partner. All the things like, oh, they have to be this way and this tall and they have to make this amount of money. We can ignore all the stuff that doesn't matter and get straight to the point,
Yeah.
right? And so I'd say
Yeah.
it's much easier to find someone if you are looking through life through a certain lens of the Hainun lens, which is
Mm-hmm.
true parents. True parents. It's a true parents term. Hainun. We talk about Hainun like
Yeah.
it's an organization. It is an organization, but first it's a concept that true parents came to establish. It's a Chunogok way of
Mm.
living. It's a no shadows way
Yeah.
of living. It's a pure water way of living. Whatever you want to call it, it's what Father and Mother and God have established, and we're trying to substantiate it through organization and structure, particularly through our programs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say you were talking about, seeing color for the first time. I would say, as another analogy, it's just like feeling free, right? Like completely free. As we say, no shadows, right? And it's feeling complete trust that you're loved no matter what, right? And it's just you just feel free. There's no doubt, there's no uncertainty or insecurity that can cloud, that can bring up shadows. And it's such an amazing way of interacting with the world. And yeah, and a lot of people feel that when you give grace, people will take advantage of you, or people will keep making the same mistakes that they asked for forgiveness before, and nothing will change, right? And this is why the five virtues are five. And this is why it's grace, but it's also integrity, and it's also accountability, honesty, right? Courage. It's there is a vision, there is a goal that we are working towards, that we're learning and growing towards. And yes, we can give grace for mistakes or for whatever happens, but there's a going back to integrity process, right? And admitting mistakes and getting accountability, and 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 the grace, right, throughout this whole process, right? So it's the best way, because you know that you are talking to a person that really wants to grow, really wants to become better, and achieve whatever vision you have together as a couple or individually, and whatever mistake they do, they will be able to admit it, and they will be able to take responsibility for it and correct it, right? And that's yeah, it's just, again, you have that trust that you can love that person, that you can accept that person, and that you can continue to grow together with that person, right? So, that's why we have these programs.
The program. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are our programs and where should people find them?
Yes, our programs are Ascent, which is sexual integrity training. Then we have Core, which is marriage prep, and we have Radiant, which is for recently blessed couples that want to make sure that they have a community where they can grow together towards their goals. And you can find those in highnoon.org. And you can find more information about all these programs there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Araceli, thank you for your sharing, contribution. Share this episode with everybody that you love.
Thank you.
Let them know that you love them, especially if you're getting matched and blessed. If you have a team to share it with, then just send it to your parents. And lots of love to you guys. Catch you in the next episode. Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.